Alright guys, so EPZ has made some pretty interesting IEMs. In fact, lately we've checked out their 550, or what they called the Purple Phoenix. And not only did it have this interesting look about it, but it really had this sound that kind of separated itself from a lot of the other IEMs that I've tested. So today we're going to be checking out the P40, which is what they call Star Trails. And this is another one that's taking a different approach, not only because of the design. This is definitely where the name Star Trails comes from. It is very light and airy looking. It kind of has this galaxy look because of the colors. The price on this one comes in at $159, but it is definitely the driver or multiple driver arrangement that they've decided to go with, and the tuning that's kind of making this another one that stands out. So as far as from a design standpoint, the outside of the packaging is kind of bland compared to the product itself. The box is just black. You can see this kind of galaxy layout on the front. But the color and the design of the IEM, it is a 3D resin printed body, so it's really smooth. But the outside is actually a laser textured metal faceplate. So it actually has a little bit of a different texture to it. And it's one of those, depending on the angle that you look at it, is, what color it is. It's kind of like a light blue, pink, purple. It's just a really cool look. But again, this is gonna turn some people off, because if you're liking something that's more subtle, not as flashy, if you're somebody that usually gravitates towards black or gray like myself, something like this you may not want in your ears just because of the attention that it's going to pull towards you. But the driver configuration that these are using, and this is where it gets very interesting to me, it is using 4 drivers in each ear. It's using 2 dynamic drivers. It's using a 9mm DLC driver to handle the low end. It's using a 7mm DLC driver to handle the mids, and then it's using a planar driver to handle the treble, and then it's using a piezoelectric driver to kind of smooth all of this out so that the treble doesn't peak as much. And then it's using a 4-way crossover system so that none of these are crossing each other's paths, and it's allowing everything to do what it's doing without having this congested or muddy sound. Now, as far as what all they've included in the box, you do get this nice pleather case, which is also a lighter blue or maybe even greenish color. It does come with 2 different style of ear tips. Now, these are silicone ear tips. Now, the interesting thing here, if you look at their website and on Amazon, it looks like it's supposed to come with 3 different styles. I only got 2 different styles, but there's plenty to choose from. And I will say you definitely want to check both of these because they are going to affect the sound a little bit, but you do want to make sure that you get one that is the right fit. And then the cable they've included, this is where I was kind of surprised as well. Now, this is pretty nice thick cable for an IEM. It is using the 2-pin connection, so that's what goes into the IEM itself. And then the part that you're going to be plugging into whatever device you're using, you have both a 3.5mm option and a 4.4mm balanced option. They just simply remove, they're just adapters on the end here. So it's nice that you have this. If you're just going to plug it straight into a laptop, you have that 3.5mm option. But if you're going to sit at your desktop, you maybe want to plug it into an amp or a DAC, and you have that 4.4mm balanced option. It's nice that you can switch over to that pretty easily. It's simply just pull them off and then switch from one to the other. And then speaking of using these with an amp, now these come in with an impedance level of only 14 ohms with a sensitivity of 100 decibels. This is an extremely easy IEM to drive. If you just want to use it to get some really decent volume, I'll go ahead and say right now you don't need an amp or a DAC for that. But if you really want to pull out the potential of these, I'm going to say you need an amp or a DAC simply for that case. And the reason you would want to do this, now we can go ahead and get into the sound, is because of how well the clarity comes out in these. There's a lot of focus on the mids and the treble. The bass, in my opinion, is kind of an afterthought, but not in a way where it just feels like it gets lost, but it's just so tightened up that you're just getting the exact detail of bass. You're not getting that overbloated bass, that overly aggressive that has any chance of rolling over the mids and the highs. This is a very vocal focused IEM, and it is a very treble detailed focused IEM. And so it's kind of interesting what it does with the crash of cymbals, where, usually any headphone or earbud that I've tested that's more treble focused, that's where you start to get the sibilant sound with S's. It seems to get a little harsh with things like that. But this pair never did that. It allowed so much detail with each crash of the cymbals, but it never peaked. It never got harsh. It is one of those that's actually pretty smooth overall. And what that does is also allow you to listen to these for like a long time without ear fatigue. It's not peaking at any point. It's not doing things too much. But the fact that it's so focused on mids and treble, it's kind of refreshing to go back and listen to your music catalog with this IM. That's kind of what I found myself getting lost in doing, is going and listening to things that I normally listen to, but it sounds so much different when it's not pushing the low end, or if it's trying to pull out vocals a little bit more. And some things with treble get buried in a lot of IEMs and earbuds because they're usually focused somewhere else. So again, it is definitely a different approach from EPZ. I can see where this is more for like artists or musicians that want to use them on stage, or maybe like in a recording studio where you do need to hear every little subtle thing. But where these also really shine are for movies and for games. If you want to hear dialogue a lot better, if you want to hear like the rustling of leaves or footsteps, this is definitely one of those pairs that's going to pull all of that out. It's just not going to be as accentuated, like if explosions or things like that are going on. You're not going to feel that impact of bass as much as you would probably some other IEMs or earbuds that you're normally used to. So another area that I was kind of surprised in is the soundstage, the sound imaging, because this is normally an area where bass kind of affects things, where it'll make you feel a little bit more closed in. So I thought with this pair being more focused on the mids and the treble, this was going to be a very wide open sounding IEM, but actually it kind of teetered along that medium to large size room. Never made me feel like I was in this huge like concert hall or stadium. It, again, kind of had some intimacy to it, but again, that kind of matched pretty well with bringing out vocals in a way. It kind of feels like you're more in a booth with somebody instead of seeing them in a live situation. So my overall opinion is this: if you want something completely different, or if you're somebody that listens to things more like classical or easy listening, I would say older country, anything that's a little more vocal driven, or anything that kind of focuses around acoustic instruments or strings, anything where you're just wanting to hear every like fine detail, that is what this pair is for. I don't know that I would put it into that category of listening to, music casually. If you're listening to it, just as like while you're studying and you just want something maybe to keep you up, or if you're listening to them at a gym, you want something to keep you energized, that's not the sound signature that the EPZ P40 has. Again, it's a lot more detail focused. And again, it's refreshing. And I think, if you have a collection of IEMs and you want something that just is geared specifically towards detail, I highly recommend this pair. Obviously, the looks of these are going to stand out. That's something that matters to you. But just from the tuning, the sound signature, and the details that they were pulling out, that is why I would recommend a lot of people interested in that definitely checking out the P40s. But guys, that wraps up my video on these. Thank you so much for checking out this video. Thank you so much for checking out all the other videos. And as always, make sure to stay tuned for more.